We've got people-to-people transmission. We should expect outbreaks.
Global spread of the virus was now very high.
It is actually transmitted from one person to another.
It's the first to be contracted within the country.
As he hadn't been abroad.
The respiratory disease.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
The coronavirus.
The coronavirus.
COVID-19 disease.
With coronavirus now spreading faster outside China than within, there's understandable concern about future travel plans. COVID-19, as it's now being called, has reached Latin America and is spreading massively across Europe. Hi, it's Dave from deveratravels.com, and today's video we're going to be looking at whether you should and shouldn't be traveling because of coronavirus, and also if you do, then some handy tips for things that you should and shouldn't do whilst you are here as well. If you're new to our channel and want to get some travel tips whilst watching us travel around the world, then please consider subscribing. So the video will be broken down into 3 separate parts: where to go and where not to go, tips on what you should and should not do whilst you're away, and then if there's any advantages and the disadvantages of the coronavirus. Okay, so for the first section, we'll basically be covering where to go. We've been traveling for nearly 4 months now, and we've been looking on social media for ourselves just for our own peace of mind as well. And there's a lot of people out there asking whether they should still continue their travels, whether they should cancel to go or not. I think obviously it's very dependent on where you're going to be going. More and more people are asking if they should travel around Southeast Asia or not. For now, we do not advise you to cancel your trip as a general rule, but it does, like I said, it does depend on exactly where you're going. If you're going to go to one of the countries that has had a travel ban, depending on the other country, this is where you really need to start doing your research. So we were going to be going into Hong Kong and South Korea and Japan after Vietnam, but most countries are not letting you into the country if you've been to a Chinese-owned country, so China basically. So yeah, if you've been to Hong Kong within the last 2 weeks, they will not let you into the country. So we've had to change our travel plans because of that. So we cancelled the part of the trip to Hong Kong and then decided just to stick with South Korea and Japan. But at the point of us booking the trip to South Korea, that's when a huge explosion of the disease started spreading in Korea, so we had to cancel that part of the trip. So then left Japan. We booked the flight to Japan, and within probably about 12 hours later, a lot of the companies that are flying, pretty much every company that's flying from Vietnam to Japan via South Korea is either cancelling their flights completely or postponing them until the end of March, which is roughly about the time when we're going to be flying. So fingers crossed we can still get out of the country and go to where we want to go. But yeah, it's may have to come down to our travel insurance, but we have good insurance that we bought a long time ago before all the coronavirus sort of started to happen. So fingers crossed that we can still get out. So as I mentioned, we are currently in Vietnam right now. After reading all of the sort of news all around the world, we probably feel the safest here actually, even though we're kind of in the middle of it all in Asia and we're quite close to China. We actually feel very safe here. Everywhere you go, there's posters warning people, there's on the TV advertising. Everyone is basically wearing a mask, has hand sanitizers in all the hotels, restaurants, shops, everything like that. Yeah, we feel really safe here. There's not really been any major cases in Vietnam, and we probably prefer it here to be here rather than some other even European countries right now. So yeah, like we said, we wouldn't necessarily advise cancelling the trip because it's actually some countries are smarter than other countries, even in Europe, so you're probably safer here. The cases that were found in Vietnam have pretty much all cured now, so yeah, there is actually no sorry, there's also a rat jump. No rats here. So the cases that were in Vietnam have pretty much all cured now, so there isn't actually any cases of coronavirus in Vietnam currently. In comparison to Cambodia, Vietnam is much cleaner. When we just came from Cambodia, there was no messaging, there was no real information about it. It was more of a everything will be okay, we just need to push through it with our friends from China. There was no preventative actions, nobody telling you to wear a mask or hand gels. There was no additional cleaning. So we were actually in Cambodia at the time when the cruise ship docked into Sihanoukville in Cambodia, the one that was not allowed to dock in places like Thailand and a few other countries because it was suspected that they had coronavirus. So we were meant to go to Sihanoukville on our way to Koh Rong. We changed our mind at the last moment because we were informed by somebody in Phnom Penh that there was around 3,000 people from Wuhan, the epicenter of the disease, down in Sanukville about the week before we were meant to go. So the guy was very grateful to him, said do not go down there. We decided instead to go to Kampot, which is just down the road. Then once we crossed the border into Vietnam, we actually found out from our host in Ha Tien, just across the border in Vietnam, that a couple that were from Malaysia that stayed in Sanukville they weren't allowed into Vietnam because they had stayed in Sanukville. They weren't allowed to cross the border. So again, this is where you really need to take precautions and just check every single day, because these countries, they will change their mind each day whether or not they will let you into the country. Yeah, we're lucky that we took the advice. That was a bit of luck, that one, but potentially it could have happened to us. We could have not been able to cross the land border into Vietnam, and yeah, I don't know what our trip would have happened then. We may have had to, I don't know, whether we'd be allowed into a different country, we're not sure, or would we have to come back home, even without having the virus at all. Yeah, we're being perfectly well. Yeah, but Vietnam aren't taking any precautions, so that's a good thing to take away. Just, like I said, go to the countries that are taking good precautions. If you have a holiday booked on the horizon, make sure you do check with your local government and also the government of the country that you're going to, and any other World Health Organization advice. Just keep on top of it pretty much every day, because it is a continuing issue. Literally, it's changing hour to hour sometimes. But currently for me, as a British national, my UK Foreign Office is warning me not to go to most parts of China, southern parts of South Korea, and many places actually even in North Italy, because of the huge explosion of the virus there as well. So you check your own Foreign Office, but I can imagine the advice is pretty similar for you as well. Okay, so hopefully we haven't put you off your trip and you're still going, but these are the tips that will definitely stop you from getting ill, hopefully. So the first one is a nice and easy one, opening public doors for shops, fridges, bathrooms, etc. Basically, try not to ever use your hands, push it with your elbows or your shoulders, or back into it basically, because the more you use your hands, the more likely you are to then touch your face. Which then leads us on to number 2. You should use antibacterial gel as much as possible. As soon as you've touched anything, especially just before you're about to eat, we probably use it quite a few times a day, just as a precaution. Number 3, if you can keep a mask on at all times as well. If you think someone is ill, put one on, especially. So if you're traveling on public transport or you're in large groups of people, we know that the masks aren't 100% safe. They will not prevent it 100%. It can still go in through the eyes, and you can still get it from other places, but it will basically stop the large droplets. So if somebody sneezes or something like that, it will stop a big majority of it. And it's also, in case you may have it, you may transfer it to somebody else as well, which is always, just a good piece of advice. The first type of mask that you'll see most people wearing around here are the typical surgical type masks. Over here they're pretty cheap, but they're increasing in price because there's such a demand for them. A lot of the locals will wear the ones that are sort of much thicker. They're really hot. They sort of cover the whole complete face all the way up here. But if you do want to wear these ones, then basically don't touch the actual mask after you've worn it. Always only just touch these bits here. Just pull it off. Pull it off like this and then throw it straight in the bin. Don't actually touch the blue part, because that will be potentially how you'll contract the disease. The type that is recommended that you use are these ones. So they're not always 3M. The 3M are the best ones, but there's the PM 2.5. These are the ones recommended for air pollution, but these ones are also probably the best ones you can get to stop any of the disease actually coming in through the mouth, because they have a proper filtration system in here, and it properly fits. They have the padding in here, and they probably fit around your face all the way around, because it can still get in through your mouth no matter how. Yeah, these are the best ones. They're a lot more expensive. Yeah, and we also have a rather big bag of these as well. So if we're just walking around, we just typically use these, but big crowded areas, like public transport or a coach for a few hours, these ones are definitely the best ones to go. As well as using the antibacterial, try to always wash your hands as much as possible as well, especially when you come back from a day out, when you come back to your hotel. It's recommended to wash them the proper wash you do sort of before surgery. Trust me, it will definitely help in the long run. You can pick up little things everywhere, especially walking around in some places in Southeast Asia. And then that leads on to try not to touch your face as much as possible. That's one of the main ways that it's transferred, and that's the main thing on most of the posters that you'll see in Vietnam and some other countries. They say like the main tip is do not touch your face. Another tip is if you're going out for a coffee, you'll probably usually get it in a glass, and you'll probably also get a side drink of tea as well. What we found in quite a few countries, especially Cambodia, but also Vietnam and some other countries as well, they will just literally take the cup, dip it in some plain water, and then just leave it on the side to drip dry. They won't clean it at all properly. Some places have, we sort of watch just before we order sometimes just to double check, or we'll use our own cups as well, because literally your mouth will be in contact with somebody else's mouth, and yeah, it just makes sense not to reduce that as much as possible. Okay, we don't want to sound too morbid about this, but there are some slight advantages to the epidemic. Basically, the restriction on movement that has made some areas where we're traveling much quieter. It's made it easier for us to move around, and our hotels and everything like that be a lot less. There's a lot less people in them. We managed to actually book a 5-star hotel the other night for probably about a sixth of the price it should be. Yeah, we just thought we'd treat ourselves, and yeah, normally it would be full of other nationals, but those nationals are not allowed to enter the country. So for us, that was a good thing. Obviously, yeah, there's many disadvantages to the disease, but if you are traveling, then it does mean some good things as long as we can prevent the spread of the disease. Another advantage we found is the reduced amount of pollution as well. So even coming across from China, where many of the factories have been closed down because of the virus, it's just stopped a lot of the pollution coming over. The pollution levels where we are in Vietnam on the coast, sort of a few weeks ago, even then, would have been in the red zones of you have to wear the proper masks because of pollution, not because of the disease, but it's because the factories in China have closed. Which, yeah, we know it's a disadvantage and lots of people are going to suffer from that, but reduced pollution is always a good thing. Okay, so another good advantage that we hope will go through, and it hasn't necessarily gone through yet, but it's basically a restriction on poaching and the other markets that all lead to the bullshit Chinese medicine. If you read up into it a little bit, you'll see that basically Chinese medicine has started this, has created this problem. So as I mentioned, with one of the advantages of the less pollution, also the side effect of that is that there'd be potentially a small to large scale recession. There'd be some large airlines that are already reporting that they potentially may go bankrupt. Lots of hoteliers and restaurateurs, they're all reporting that they're struggling. Basically, the tourism is down massively. Obviously, China makes up a massive proportion of tourism in many countries, especially in Thailand and Vietnam and Cambodia. Yeah, they're all struggling, so that's obviously another disadvantage. But again, we could keep coming back to the point of if you choose the right countries, then there is really no issue why you should not come out to the countries, and you can still support them as well. There's no reason why not, as long as you take all the proper precautions. Okay, so hopefully we didn't put you off and in fact actually changed your mind and still wanted to continue traveling, or maybe even book your own trip. Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon if you do. And please leave a little comment below if you do decide to come out. Yeah, anyway, thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye.